Hey there, you're tuning in to LowKey by Oaky, our easygoing sessions for hotel professionals where we chat about industry trends, issues, and solutions.
Well, hello, and welcome to yet another episode of LowKey by Oaky. My name is Clément Dénarié, and I'll be your host for this episode. And today's topic is what modern guests truly want. And I'm really, really pleased to be joined by one of my favorite people in the industry.
Oh,
Who's here?
right back at you.
Who's here to, of course, talk about the guest experience and what guests truly want. CEO and founder of MorningStar GX, Miss Guest Experience, the one and only Danica Smith. Welcome.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, come on, this has been in the making even before you guys started LowKey. So I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
And we really chatted about this podcast idea for so long. And finally, we're actually making it.
And we were pioneers. We were so forward thinking back then.
Look at that. And look at us now.
Exactly.
And I'm so pleased that actually this time, I think we reversed the roles because you're normally the one hosting and asking questions nowadays.
I know. And your technical setup has got me all nervous. I'm going to relax into it. No, but it's I'm really excited to be interviewed for the first time.
You'll do absolutely great. So, Danica, please let us know why we should listen to you when it comes to guest experience. Introduce yourself a bit.
I feel like a little bit of a broken record, but as you know, I am obsessed with guest experience, but really when it comes to guest satisfaction. So what's actually happening when the guest is on property, pre-arrival and post-stay, and how is all of the technology, innovation, all of the cool things happening really moving that needle?
Interesting. What got you to be obsessed about guest satisfaction?
So going back many, many years ago, I'm an ex-hotel marketer.
Mhm.
So I was working for a UK independent hotel chain, one of Oaky's clients actually. And I was in head office function in marketing, but based on property. So it was really cool to see the divide between head office and operations. And I really fell in love with ops on the ground. And at the time, they had 3 London hotels, and they were number 8, 5, and 12 best London hotels. And I stumbled across Online Reputation, which we're going back 2011, 2012. It was all about the book direct strategy. How can we drive website traffic, website conversion? And I realized that actually on our TripAdvisor pages, the number of views that we were having was more than what the website was getting. So that was where I really understood the importance of guest satisfaction, online reputation as a tool to really drive revenue.
Mhm.
And I've been beating the same drum, different variations for 15 years.
What I find amazing is that indeed you might have been kind of bringing the same message across, but it was always guest experience coupled with revenue, right?
Yeah.
Often we hear about guest experience either on a very operational level, which becomes very tactical and very on property, or it's fluff, it's marketing. But you are managing to link it or trying to link it as much as possible to actions and revenue.
Yeah, and to try and close the bridge. And it's really interesting with the different cycles that we see. So, I mean, we had so many conversations post-COVID. So, 2023, we saw so many revenue initiatives focusing on the pre-sale, driving incremental revenue, upsells. But then operationally, with the staff shortages, just couldn't deliver. And what's interesting now in 2025, we're seeing the same kind of issue, but more with AI. So everybody's getting a little bit obsessed and distracted with the shiny new, personalized guest experience, seamless, omni-channel guest communications strategy. And yet there's still that operational, are you delivering guest satisfaction?
It's something about maybe the gap between the promise and the actual delivery of that promise, right?
Yeah, and getting the right people in the room. So if it is a revenue discussion, make sure you've got somebody from every department in ops that's sitting around the table to make sure that operationally you can deliver whatever that strategy is, whether it's personalization or whether it's upselling. It's so important that your team, across that journey can deliver it.
So take us through maybe the last couple of years evolution. Have you seen guest expectation change a lot or not? What's
Yeah.
the feeling there
I mean,
or the data?
it's quite overwhelming, to be honest. And I think, okay, this is very niche in terms of guest experience, guest satisfaction. This is all what I do, and I'm overwhelmed. So
Mm.
it's really difficult for hoteliers and operators to keep on top of all the different trends. But what we've seen in the last 6, 12 months is really these unique experiences that guests are looking for. A huge rise in sleep retreats, a huge rise in water-centric therapy, star signs in astronomy, F&B. So it really doesn't matter what it is that guests are looking for, it's something unique.
Mm.
And then that really opens up what a guest experience looks like, which is hard. If I'm a hotel with less staff operating at great occupancy, but I'm running, when do I have the time to sit there and think, what guest experience package shall I offer that's going to be unique and cut through the noise?
Yeah, and what makes me unique versus, of course, other players and
Yeah.
operators in the
And
market.
if you're a typical 4-star, 5-star city center hotel, you have a real mix of different guest segments. So, what your corporate guests are going to want is very different to your leisure, the different ages. So that's also really overwhelming. So we know guests are looking for something unique, something that speaks to me, something that emotionally connects to me. But again, it's really difficult operationally to deliver that kind of guest experience.
So you're talking about potentially the gap or the difference that there is between what guests actually want and potentially what hotels think they want. Take us through what you've seen is some of the kind of misconceptions around that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of different ways. Let's take sustainability,
Mhm.
for example. Lots of hotels, it's great at jumping on the importance of sustainability. We know it's important to guests. We still don't really know how much they're willing to pay for it.
Mhm.
But at the moment, hotels think, okay, I've got that tick box. I'm giving the guests what they want by offering come and have a free drink at the bar if you hang up your towels
Mhm.
during the stay. Well, one, what tends to happen, and it happened to me yesterday, is actually the housekeeper comes and still gives you new towels,
Regardless
regardless
of
of
what
what
you
you've just done.
decided.
And actually, Booking.com's research showed that 58% of their website traffic, huge amount, is looking for real innovation when it comes to sustainability.
Mhm.
So again, my expectations regarding sustainability is here. That's not cool if you give me a free drink. I want to see behind the scenes. I want to know about the solar panels. I want to go up to the rooftop bar and see the beehive, whatever it is. So, and that's just one example of sustainability. It's the same with F&B. It's the same with all the different guest experiences. The guest expectations for something different is just so really difficult to deliver that.
How can hoteliers then close the gap? Because it seems like some initiatives are good, maybe not good enough, while on the other side, guest expectations keep on rising. So,
Yeah.
how can hotels
So I think it's
deal with it?
so, and again, this is really theoretical and I think it works in theory. I don't know how you can implement this practically, unfortunately. But I think it is, pre-COVID, you would often see the hotel leaders taking the day out of the office, taking the day out of operations to whiteboard, get a meeting room, decide who we are, what do we want to stand for, what do we want to do, map the guest journey. That's needed. I don't know practically if that's happening, if
Mm.
there's time and space for that to happen. But I think that's really how you start to close the gap, is to really bring your business leaders across all functions around a table and decide, okay, what do we want to do? What can we test? Different areas. There's a lot of dead space in the hotel
Mhm.
room. If you have an indoor swimming pool, why not try and do a floating yoga sound bath session? Do you have time to A/B split test that? So I think it's really a resource issue that's stopping that innovation.
Mm. And I guess resource finding and sometimes indeed kind of um, doing it right. It's not just about
Yeah.
having these ideas, but also implementing them.
Yeah.
Maybe finding that kind of small incremental and experiments
Yeah.
that you can do.
Yeah. And just start somewhere,
Mm.
and again, it comes back to the staff. And I really appreciate this depends on what kind of hotel you are. It really works well if you're an independent boutique and you have, a much kind of less stress ops, but just talk to your guests. If you see a repeat guest come in and you're like, okay, Danica, this is your third time staying with us.
Mm.
Would you like to see anything different? And try and just have those open conversations. But I appreciate that's not realistic when you've got 20 people to check in on a Friday morning.
And the first thing is, of course, to recognize that guest is also a repeat guest versus not.
Oh,
and
this is my biggest pain. But yes, yeah. It's like we have the technology, really cool pre-stay, WhatsApp messages or, really targeted communication. And then I arrive and it's like, hi, is this your first time? Like, you just sent me a WhatsApp message saying, welcome back 12 hours ago. No, it's not my first time.
Yeah. And of course, repeat guests is only one segment. Are you seeing differences when it comes to other segments, right? In terms of needs and expectations? One direction that we could take this is, for example, generational.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with and again, super overwhelming to stay on top of it. So we know when it comes to, let's take technology and digitalizing the guest journey, we know Gen Z and millennials, 63%, for example, would rather check in online. So I think there's a bit of assumption around targeting that segment when it comes to digitalizing the guest journey, looking at digital communications. But ultimately, on the other end, I look at my 70-year-old dad. He spends 10 hours a day on Facebook, so I think it really is not falling into the easy traps, but maybe that's a good starting place. But again, the testing and trialing, because I think different segments have different needs. I mean, look at us when we travel. I have 5 different guest preferences in my life.
Yeah.
I'm traveling with my girlfriends. I want an espresso martini. If I'm with my husband, I want a nice wine. If I'm with my kids, I want a strong coffee. So it's, and sometimes there are some really cool brands that deliver things you don't even know that you want as a guest. And that's really which I think is exciting when it comes to like the wellness, and the really far advancements there of being able to go to a hotel and having your blood checked and, having an IV drip. That's not something that I would maybe be looking for. But when I see that as an Instagram advert, I'm like, ooh, this could be a fun girls' weekend away. So again, it's also maybe delivering a guest experience that maybe the guest doesn't even know that they want.
Yeah. And again, we kind of get back to the overwhelming piece because right now you just said, okay, please recognize me, but also surprise me. And also I can be very different than the guest that I was last week because the circumstances, the context of my travel are completely different.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It really is a lot. And, and that's just looking at it from a guest experience point of view, not, how do I then deliver that? How do I capture those preferences? How do I store that information? So I think it is overwhelming. We do have the technology to help kind of streamline a lot of these initiatives a bit more efficient. It's just being a bit more creative, maybe, if you are an independent brand. I think this is where the book direct strategy can go.
And so let's take this a bit practically, right? Today, hotel teams have tools in place, right? But how would you say these teams should maybe start and try to deliver this genuine care at the scale that they can? Because obviously the resources are still limited.
Yeah.
So what would you say is kind of a good starting point here?
So I think this comes back to the same conversation that we've been having post-COVID. Unfortunately, to still bring it back to that is staff, like making sure your staff are happy, making sure they're empowered, making sure that they're supported. If you have happy staff and give them the freedom to then really be them true selves, and really be adaptive and relaxed enough to meet the different guests and react into the different scenarios that's ahead of them. So I think focusing on your staff engagement, staff retention, staff care, staff well-being. I think as an industry, we still forget there's a lot of mental health issues in our industry. There's a lot of financial stress, a lot of pressures. And it's kind of like AI conversations have just wiped out that part of how we need to focus and care for our team. So I think that's really important. And then there are different training as well that I think we were talking about Citizen. I remember when I went to stay at their property, they really make sure that their staff can have that emotional intelligence. So if you see a businessman walking into the lobby, with suitcases, you can assume he's here for 1 or 2, a long stay. So then that's different if he's with a backpack, so those kind of like, I mean, I'm not in operations, but I'm sure many of your listeners know more of these examples, but making sure you've got that emotional intelligence to be able to read somebody and try and suss their situation before you interact with them, and then be flexible in how you interact with that guest.
So that EQ and then right after the empowerment of doing something new,
Yeah.
right? Because if you have this, recognition of a certain type of guest, but you can't do much with it because your SOPs are so strict that actually there is nothing that really, as
Yeah.
a front desk agent, you can do. This doesn't provide a genuine guest experience either.
No, and if you are a human and you're not allowed to use your EQ and you're not allowed to flex those muscles,
Mm.
then you might as well just digitalize that whole pre-arrival, arrival, and have, a seamless humanless approach, because it's wasted. You're just going to have unhappy staff and a huge headcount if you're not going to invest in your staff that way.
So power to the people, and
Power to the people, yes.
and obviously, for these people to be empowered and to feel like they can actually make a difference, there is probably some tasks that need to be taken over by technology, right?
Mhm.
So how would you say is a good balance between the world of everything human or the world of everything tech?
Yeah, and it has to be. Well, actually, I was about to say it has to be hybrid, but it doesn't. There are some brands like Numa Hotels that are doing it fantastically, where it's a little bit hybrid, but it's mainly, automated across the journey.
Mhm.
What is important is there's some like basics here. It needs to be seamless. So if you are going to start bringing in the technology to digitalize the guest journey, then it needs to flow. Second of all, your rates. I think it works very well if you are a 3-star property, but really if you have a really high ADR rate, there's no bot that can give me and deliver that guest experience that I'm looking for. So it comes back to who you are as a brand and also what kind of guests,
Mm.
when I travel corporate, I love online check-in. I always do online check-in. I would never do it if I was paying for it myself. I
Mm.
want to talk to the reception. I want to know what's going on in the neighborhood.
And I think that that's so interesting because next to kind of making a choice and maybe strategizing on, yes, I want hybrid, or yes, I want a more tech or more human approach as a hotel, right? It's also about sharing that, right?
Mm,
Actually explaining that and setting these expectations to the guest
yeah.
that, well, I have great staff, I have a great team, and they're empowered to flex those muscles, as you said.
Mhm.
Well, I think it really matters for the guest to also know and
Yeah.
maybe choose one property over another, because indeed they want to actually speak and have a great chat, even if it's a chit chat with the receptionist when they come in.
Exactly. And I think for hoteliers, I mean, when you look at that kind of hybrid approach, who are the experts here? It is the tech vendors. So I think it's really important that you have that partnership with your tech vendors and kind of say, like, help me with this strategy. At what point should it be human? At what point should it be digital? At what point in the guest journey should I allow the guest to choose? And really push back on the tech vendors to
Mm.
bring that partnership and help strategize, because the hotels just don't have the time, and B, it's not their field, it's not their knowledge. So I think that's also really important to for the vendors to support the implementation and that strategy of what it looks like.
When we started this podcast, we talked about this bridge between guest satisfaction and revenue. I think for a lot of hoteliers, it's still very tough to actually see that bridge, and that link.
Yeah.
Um, what is a great example that you could share with our listeners, of direct impact on revenue from an extra focus on guest satisfaction?
I mean, there's so many data points now. Just go into ChatGPT and say, what is the direct correlation between guest satisfaction on revenue, even on profit now as well? We've got data points, but there's the good old famous Cornell University study with CG Review Pro, it's still maybe the exact numbers aren't the same, but we know for every 1% increase in guest satisfaction equals 0.89% in occupancy and 1.4% in RevPAR. So it is really about moving that needle. But what we have spoke about for such a long time, and what I love, is being able to monitor that. So let's take what Oaky's doing. There's fantastic ways for your clients, which I know many of your clients already are doing, to be able to actually understand, okay, how did that not only drive revenue and the fantastic metrics there, but how did that improve the guest satisfaction? How did that improve my online reputation? And then being able to close that gap. And it's really easy to do. We have the tools there, just not many hoteliers have that at the forefront of the mind when it comes to implementing hotel tech.
Mm.
How did it improve guest satisfaction? But with the revenue, I love it when the clients that we've both worked together see, okay, yeah, here are the revenue metrics, but what other KPIs should I be looking at?
Mm,
Are my guests more satisfied or not? And, 10 times out of 10, they were.
mm, mm. We can't, Danica, we can't talk about guest satisfaction and what modern guests truly want without talking about loyalty as a concept. And there, I'd love to hear from you. I think there is many reports and studies that are starting to prove this, but it seems like the traditional kind of point-based programs that are just more reward programs and loyalty programs don't cut it anymore.
No, and again, the research there, Skift's research showed us, I've got it here, 71% of travelers prefer loyalty programs offering some sort of emotional connection, something that resonates with me instead of a transactional point scheme. So again, I still don't know why hotels still have these old school point schemes. I do think the space of loyalty is super fun.
Mm.
And that's where you can get really creative. Maybe operationally, I can't have a sound bath because it doesn't work for noise control or whatever, but maybe I can partner up with a really cool yoga brand that does. So I think we need to take more of a leaf out of the retail landscape and look at what we can do there and be bold enough to offer a loyalty partnership that's outside of my property.
Mhm.
I don't need to keep my guests on property all the time. That doesn't necessarily mean the best guest experience. And the second point with loyalty is payment side as well, and like maybe look to give direct money back somehow. And so I think the loyalty space is really exciting. I'm excited to see what brands break the traditional barriers of hotels, and we are behind the other industries when it comes to this, like if you have a really cool in-room technology strategy, why not give me a free, Netflix month on my license? I don't know if that's possible.
I mean, why not? Again, think out of the
But
box.
that's the kind of thing that I would want to see if I was staying in a room that was like promoting the in-room, technological TV experience.
Mm.
That's a cool loyalty scheme.
It's cool. It's cool. And it's also different. Again, kind of get back into unique, maybe something unexpected that kind of sticks with the brand and the concept of the hotels that I have.
Yeah.
Nice. Danica, I'd love for our listeners to come out of this with maybe just one specific item. What is one small change that you would say hotels can make today that would have a big impact on guest experience and guest satisfaction?
Make sure that guest satisfaction is an agenda point in every single meeting. It might just take 60 seconds, but regardless of maintenance to finance to marketing to GMs to revenue, guest satisfaction needs to be an agenda point. How is this improving, changing, implementing, shifting guest satisfaction? And so make sure it's at the table of every conversation because that's what we're here for, right? To make happy guests. So it should be in every single meeting.
Happy guest, that means more revenue, that means more loyalty, and that means, of course, sustainability on the business itself.
And happy staff. So I'm doing a GM's conference for one of my clients, and the person that's invited me, guess what role and what function they're from? And they said, Danica, we want you to come and do a 60-minute session on service to our GMs. HR.
Amazing.
I love it. So she was like, Danica, I really want to put a different spin about service and how important service is to guest satisfaction and why our people are so important.
I mean, I could go on another 2 or 3 podcasts just about this, right? Like
I know.
giving back hospitality to the hospitality workers. Why did they actually choose that direction and that track if it's not to provide amazing guest experience?
Yeah. And I think, like we said earlier, we were really focused on that with the staff shortage issue in 2023 of our staff and how important they are. And I think as an industry, we've lost that. Like if I look at the conferences that I've attended this year, nobody's really spoke about staff satisfaction. So I would also like to bring staff empowerment back to the table.
Love it. Make hospitality sexy again.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Here's the bell. All right. Well, that means that we need to move on to the next section. Danica, it's the shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
Go for it.
Well, you're going to think I'm really cheesy and corny, but my shameless plug is to really plug guest satisfaction. Like, please, hotel tech vendors, hotel operators, management companies, please bring back guest satisfaction to the forefront and make sure it is a KPI that you're monitoring, you're talking about. So that's my shameless plug.
Well, you're not called Miss Guest Satisfaction for nothing. That's how passionate you are about that topic. All right. Amazing. Well, Danica, I want to thank you so much for
Thank
all your
you.
insights. This was very interesting. We definitely went through a lot of different impacts that guest satisfaction can have. We also saw it's not easy. It's not an easy job to actually make guests happy, especially with very changing expectations and different guests in general that our hotels have to welcome. This was episode 28 of LowKey by Oaky. Stay tuned.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much.
me.